Hey, it's Ozzy. I'm going to quickly count down what I thought were the best films of 2017. There's going to be about 10 of them, and also the biggest disappointments of 2017. I'm going to do it quite quickly. Here we go. First of all, came out very early in the year. It was a film called Life, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Ryan Reynolds, and Rebecca Ferguson. A lot of people went against this film because they thought it was too much like Alien, and it really is. It really hits the same beats as Alien did, but what I will say that it did is that it captured it brilliantly. In the cinema, I was thrilled, I was horrified, I was feeling something, and not many films this year have even done that to anybody. You know, you got this kind of crazy alien organism thing chasing and killing people on a spaceship, and they're presented with all these different ideas. Not one moment was I bored. I was invested in the film, and I cannot believe why everyone's kind of really hacking on it, just because it copied another film. If it does it well, in my book, that's a good film. If I feel something, that's a good film. It did so much more than what other films claim to have done this year. Beauty and the Beast by Disney. This made a ton of money. Once again, this is another film that felt like it was basically the same story as the animated story, brought to life with, you know, real life action characters, actors, and CGI. It was just a better rendition of the film. It had some of the same songs and jokes. I just think it was better done. And if I was going to watch a Beauty and the Beast story, I probably wouldn't watch the animated one. I'd watch this one. It was really well done. I've got no problems with it. Yeah, it's the same kind of thing, but it's better. And when I watched it in the cinema, I had a really good time. So I would say that's one of the better films of this year. No one really kind of has given the light of day. John Wick 2 was a really good action film. I was kind of on the fence with John Wick 1, but I really like what they do with the action scenes here. And it's pretty much by the numbers action film. You know who he's killing, why he's killing them. But it presents a new kind of story, and Keanu Reeves just fills that action role so well. I was just enjoying myself. I love a good action film. This one did it perfectly. It was a really good film. A lot of people's radars that just went straight by. No one really even knew it was in the cinema at the time. It's got a couple of throwaway villains, but at the end of it, I really enjoyed it, and I do want to see it again. Logan, one of the first superhero movies to come out earlier this year. This was a really good change of pace for the Wolverine series. The two standalone Wolverine films were kind of so. The first one was actually quite bad, but this one took a real hard edge to it. It's got blood. The very opening moments of it are really good. Wolverine goes nuts. And that's what you've always wanted him to see. He's chopping up people. He's using those claws not just for this kind of, you got me. It's hacking people up. This guy is a force of nature. He's destructive. I will say that as it goes on, it loses a bit of steam. But the fact that you get to see Wolverine like that, and it is kind of a more serious kind of film than what they've done before. It was just a new approach, and I really liked it. It was a fresh breath of air and done quite well. So it's probably the best Wolverine film you've got there, and I was a big fan of it. Of course, Wonder Woman was the big hit this year that no one really saw coming. You know, the idea of a female superhero led film was a bit of a question mark for some people. I don't really know why, because there's been plenty of female-led action films that have been, you know, big hits like The Hunger Games. Even Star Wars, The Force Awakens was led by a woman. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. There's so many other films that I don't know why this was an issue. I always thought it was going to be big, and yes, it was big, and it was good. Not only does it cater to the comic book storyline, it doesn't shed Wonder Woman of her femininity. You know, she coos when she sees a baby. She likes to look good. She puts on the hat and does these things, and it doesn't betray that. It's not just like a man replaced by a woman in an action film. It's got a bit of character and a bit of heart. Yes, the end of it kind of blows out of proportion, and there are some other things that you kind of go, I don't know about that, but it does have heart, and it does have moments of, you know, genuine character that you can kind of connect to and relate to, and I really liked it. Get Out. This is a film I'm not a big fan of Jordan Peele or the other guy. I don't think their comedy's that great. They've done about one sketch that I thought was funny, but he did this film, and so I was kind of went into it with low expectations, but he changed my mind. I really thought it was quite a clever film. It's kind of a horror, it's kind of a comment on society, but nonetheless, it was done well. There are some kind of cheap scare moments, but yeah, I couldn't help but just be thinking throughout this film, like, I'm liking where this is going. This is different, this is bizarre, and by the end of it, I had a big smile on my face. So yeah, it's probably not the best film of the year, but it is very interesting, and it surprised me, so I really quite liked it. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was a film, like, I'm a huge fan of the first Guardians of the Galaxy. I think that did something that most comic book films are trying to do these days, most Disney films are trying to do these days. But I don't think they're ever going to quite capture that again, and they tried to do it here, and it doesn't fully work, but it is still a good film. I think James Gunn is a good filmmaker. Some moments of heart don't quite work, some moments of comedy don't quite work, but on the whole, it is a fun, enjoyable film. Not as good as the first Guardians, and I'd probably rank this a bit lower down my list of the best films of the year, but still enjoyable. One of the better superhero movies to come out of this year, which there was a lot of. It was another film that was really good, and I think what worked best in this film was the kind of Sandlot Kids nature about it, going against a horrific creature. I've always thought, when I saw the original It, which is about 4 hours and has two parts to it, one where they're young, one where they're old, I always thought the most interesting part of it was when they were young, and to make a film like that. And the way I saw this film is exactly what I wanted. You know, you've got Pennywise the Clown, really scary. I think he's the scariest at the very start. I think he doesn't get as scary as it goes on the more you see him. I would have liked to see a little less of him and probably used a bit better, but the Strange Things kid in it is really funny, and just the banter they have, it's actually a genuine kind of young friendship that we're all enjoying as we watched. And you kind of do feel for these kids. You don't want them to go, even though there's not much of a horror element, you don't really feel like one of them are going to get killed. I probably would have wished that a bit more happened, but it was enjoyable and I really quite liked it. Justice League, after the horse manure version of Batman vs Superman that we got, and what a bad taste that left in everyone's mouth. Everyone wasn't excited about coming into this Justice League film, which has supposedly been one of the biggest matchups and biggest combination of characters that we've all been waiting for. And to tell you the truth, it had a lot of issues behind it, and watching the film, there are a lot of issues in it. Some scenes just don't match up, and there's a bit of pacing issues, but nonetheless, it was fun. It was really enjoyable, and each one of these characters I really liked. I saw it twice just to make sure I really enjoyed it. And yeah, it's got really good action. The humor's really good. It works. Not always, but there's bits like the way they handled the Flash was really cool. Spoiler alert, Superman does come back in it later on. Batman and Aquaman and Wonder Woman, they all really work well, and I just thought it had a good heart. It had really good questions, like when Batman asks Wonder Woman, why aren't you the leader? And she should. It asks these important questions that make you think. So there's a bit of an intelligence behind this film. As much as it is a mess, there are elements of it that really do work, and they work more so than some of the other films that came out this year, especially superhero films. And for that fact, I will rate it above most of the films I saw this year. Another superhero film, and probably the best superhero film of the year, is Thor Ragnarok. Thor was a character that was going nowhere fast with the first two films, and I think it was thanks to Joss Whedon to kind of add a bit of humor to him that actually made him a bit more likable. And it's not kind of intelligent humor, he's a bit of a dumb kind of jock character in a sense. And they've kind of really taken that on board with this film, and they've added more color. They've just basically put a whole Guardians of the Galaxy tint on it, because Thor is one of those characters that is from space, and he's in that kind of a realm where you can just kind of create everything and mix it all together, and it really worked. You've got Taika Waititi. I'm not the biggest fan of some of his stuff, but he does have a unique taste, and he handled it pretty well. I saw it twice, and yeah, quite enjoyed myself. As much as some of the humor does get in the way of a bit of what could be an interesting storyline, and the story was actually well written. I just think it's a really enjoyable film. Probably not on the same level as Guardians of the Galaxy 1, but it comes, you know, it gets close, I would say. It gets close. So yeah, Thor Ragnarok, a really enjoyable film. I'd really put it up there, maybe in the top 3 of what I liked this year. And perhaps the best film I saw this year was Lady Macbeth, which is an independent film about a woman. I think this is back in the turn of the 18th, 19th or 20th century. And she's kind of, you know, a young wife to this husband who's a bit weird. And he goes away, and she's just this very powerful character that kind of goes off and starts doing her own thing. And it's just really interesting. It's a real small film. I don't think many people watched it, and it really wasn't advertised or kind of celebrated that much. But I really quite liked it. I do want to watch it again. But yeah, really nice. Lady Macbeth, just it's intense, but I don't know, I can't say too much about it because I saw it early in the year. All I know is that I really liked it. Really good performances, and just a strong character that I kind of held on to throughout the film. The biggest disappointments, this is, I would say most of actually all of 2017 was really disappointing because it's just such a step back for film. There is not one great film, you know, and when I talk about a great film, I'm talking about a film you buy and you watch again and you go, oh, when was that film made? Oh, it was back in 2017. No one's going to be saying that. There was not one film that was great in my book. Here are probably the biggest disappointments, however, of those films. Alien Covenant. Now, this is directed by Ridley Scott, and it's supposedly a sequel and a prequel to Alien and Prometheus. But Ridley Scott has just lost the plot with the Alien series. I think he kind of thinks it's his own, and he's trying to bring it back to himself. But what he's done is that he's pissed off people who are big fans of Alien. Like, he just made so many stupid decisions with these supposedly smart scientists. And every time you go in a film and you ask questions like, why are they doing this? Why would he do that? You detach yourself further away. You can't connect. You don't understand what they're doing. And this happens so many times. And there's literally a point where, you know, he's talking to an alien. You know that this person's obviously evil. It was just so stupid. Stupid is the word. And I didn't relate to any of it. Yes, there's some good gore in it, but the questions that piss you off at the end of it just keep getting worse and worse, and I just hate the film. It's a huge disappointment. I don't want to see another Alien film, especially at the hands of Ridley Scott. Dunkirk, this is by Christopher Nolan. He is one of my favorite directors. He is one of the recent directors that have actually got people interested in cinema, and he's brought in those billions of dollars, especially for the Batman franchise and Inception. I think Interstellar still made a hell of a lot, and this did pretty well, but from what he's capable of, this was so lackluster and so boring. He tries to do these 3 things, like it's set in 1 week, 1 day, and 1 hour, with the Dunkirk invasion and when the British soldiers were trying to get off the beaches and go back home. And it's just a forgettable film. It's not necessarily boring, but not a lot happens. You don't connect to anybody, you're not introduced to anybody. It just kind of is a documentary. It's almost too realistic. And I saw it and then I walked out and I went, okay. It was just so meh and forgettable, and considering it's come from one of the better directors of recent memory, it's just super disappointing. I keep looking back on it and go, why didn't you do more? You were obviously, you know, very affected by this storyline, and it meant a bit to you, but you just did nothing with it. Yeah, you've completely portrayed it in a realistic sense, but this is a film, this is cinema. You know, you're supposed to take us on a ride, tell a story, not just do a documentary, which I really, and I was quite disappointed by that fact. Blade Runner 2049. Now this looks the part, this sounds the part, this is acted really well. I saw this 3 times nonetheless. This is like the most I saw any other film. And I think I only did that because I love this world of, you know, Technicolor and just spaceships flying around and just the atmosphere. It was really cool how they created all that. But nonetheless, the story was boring. The first time I saw it, I was just sitting there and I was like, this is dragging. And the questions that it raised, it never kind of finishes. And it comes across as this intelligent film, but it really isn't. It asks one intelligent question. And it's kind of what it is to be human, but it doesn't follow it follow that thread on anywhere. And they bring back Harrison Ford for this kind of cameo thing at the end. It really doesn't do anything. Kind of a cruddy fight scene at the end. There's a character, Love, that I really liked, and she has this aim to impress her boss, Jared Leto, and they just don't follow through with it. There were so many points that I was just like, this is all right, but it could have been so much more. It really had a great potential, and it's almost as if they're setting it up for a third film. They're trying to franchise this one as well for this stupid alien robot war or whatever the hell they want to do. And I'm like, no, just create a soul story and do as much as you can with that. And it's a long film that really doesn't go anywhere in a sense, and it doesn't compare to the original, and it's quite disappointing in that fact. And Denis Villeneuve is a director I'm quite keen on watching his films. I think Sicario is probably his best, and that was really great a couple of years ago. But yeah, it's just another very disappointing film of the year. Another really disappointing one is The Disaster Artist by James Franco. This is a adaptation of a book written about one of the worst films ever made called The Room, and you probably know about it if you're a cinephile, but James Franco plays Tommy Wiseau, and he does it pretty well, and the idea of the story is actually done very well for the most part, but one thing ruins all of it, and that is Dave Franco as Greg Sestero, like the main character. He's such a bad actor, and he's playing him like Woody Allen or something like that. If you look at who Greg Sestero is, he's actually kind of a tall, good-looking guy, maybe a bit shy, but he plays him like this. I can't get. Oh, okay, sure. He's doing this all the time, and it's just like you don't know how to act. You don't know what this character is. I just got so freaking annoyed with Dave Franco in this film. And that's probably not the only part of it. This comes across as a comedy, and there's a lot of jokes in it that they've created. But the funniest stuff is what was actually in the original film, The Room. That's what's still funny. That's what I laughed at. The fact that they did this in the film, and the fact that they, thought this was funny, and that's what how Tommy was. That's what I thought was funny, not necessarily the jokes, but they put behind it. And in the end, it comes into this very cliche realization of that it was a bad film, and it just was not organic. It was tacked on, and I was like, that didn't happen. When they approached this film in a real sense, and they got through to these characters that were, larger than life, but actually real people, and when they kind of connected that link, it was good. But in the end, it just threw it out of the park, and I was just like, okay, that never happened. And that's where I just fell off. So it could have been a good film, and then Dave Franco and all these other things it just pissed me off. And that's a film I was disappointed about, and it could have been another great film. And possibly the worst and the most disappointment I'll have this year is one I only just saw the other night, Star Wars The Last Jedi. Look, I'm a fan of Rian Johnson with Looper. I thought he did well, and I had hopes coming into this film, and especially after The Force Awakens, which you cannot thank J.J. Abrams enough for, because of just how well he set that up for what could be an exciting sequel. Who are the Knights of Ren? Bring them in, Snoke, Rey's backstory, Rey training montage, bring Luke into this new world and see where his powers are now. They just cut through all of that. It's almost as if Rian Johnson wanted to impress people with how adventurous he was as a writer, and go, ooh, I'm going to take this out because that's so predictable. Everyone wants to do that. And then it's the question is, okay, where are you going to go now? He goes, I don't know, but I did this, which was brave, wasn't it? It just seemed too much of that, too much of a bit of writer wank, and it just has kind of ruined the Star Wars saga for me. I really don't have any interest in seeing the last film, because they've taken all the intrigue, all the mystery, all the mythology, and I've got no reason to move forward. And especially after not really liking Rogue One, I think they're just going further down. Han Solo doesn't sound like it's going to be much better. Force Awakens, you couldn't have started off a franchise of Star Wars' caliber any better. But to throw mud against it like these two films that have just come out is so disappointing. I am still processing how many bad things are in this film. Not only like Carrie Fisher's Superman, the many plot holes, the stupid chase scene. There's an idea that why are they faster than our ships, which are more technologically advanced? And he says, because they're lighter and faster. But aren't they in space? Isn't weight kind of not an issue? And it's mainly about the force that you can push yourself along. Like, there's just so many little stupid things. And just like I was saying before, when you ask yourself these questions, like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? You detach from the film. You get further away. I didn't feel anything. I was bored in it. The action isn't better than any other Star Wars film. I consider this the worst Star Wars film ever made. The prequels look better than this. Yeah. So after a very disappointing year, this is probably the worst year in film in over 30 years, I'd say. I don't think it's been consistently you get at least one great film a year since the 1982 or something like that. But now we're in a really bad state with film. Box office numbers are down. Directors are kind of being controlled by producers. They're not really creating their own vision, and you're getting a lot of the same old stories. No one's excited. When you see a trailer, they're always the same kind of trailers. Nothing new's coming out. So we're in a really bad state of film. The only way we can get out of it is to do kind of the approach of the 70s, which to take bigger risks like Get Out and go with new directions and, you know, cram that budget down from 200 million and start doing those 40, 50 million dollar films, and just try and take risks. Do something new instead of trying to play it safe all the time. Anyway, that's my long rant on 2017, the hits and misses. Yeah, cheers.